Look, you might also think, given the emphasis of this morning's program, this new What is a Woman campaign being launched by Family First, some debate over pronouns in schools, the continued propagandisation of the FIFA Women's World Cup, that New Zealand is alone in the weirdness that we live with in this country, particularly around gender issues and particularly in terms of their attack on free speech in this country, the rubbish that is talked about, misinformation and disinformation. And, of course, tomorrow we'll be critiquing or starting to have a look at this new Radio New Zealand documentary, I use the term loosely, series on disinformation, which will, of course, be super woke and have all the usual disinformation suspects in it. But we're not alone, in struggling with these issues. And across the ditch in Australia, a country an increasingly popular bolt hole for New Zealanders who have had enough of things here, they are facing and dealing with the same issues. We have spoken before to Rachael Wong, who's the CEO of the Women's Forum in Australia, and who I follow on social media. And two issues in particular have had me interested in the last wee while. And let's deal with them by welcoming Rachael back onto the platform. Lovely to see you again, Rachael. How are you?
Good morning, Sean. I'm very well, thank you. Lovely to see you too.
Okay. Look, let's just start with the misinformation, disinformation changes. And they're so similar in some ways to the proposals we've got here. But your government saying, we're going to move to censor social media, the internet in a new way?
Yeah, it's interesting. As changes have sort of been unfolding here, I've had multiple people messaging me saying New Zealand's doing something similar, which I found interesting because I feel like everyone's almost taking inspiration from what Jacinda Ardern said during the pandemic, which was that, our government is the single source of truth. And that's exactly what Australia is trying to enshrine in its new misinformation bill at the moment. So basically what it's done, or what it's doing, is that it is giving powers to a government body to issue huge fines, we're talking millions of dollars of fines, to social media companies and digital platforms who fail to crack down on misinformation and disinformation on their platforms. So the only difference between the two is that disinformation is intentional, whereas misinformation can be information that the government or the social media company doesn't consider to be true, but is not necessarily done intentionally.
Okay, and who makes that decision? Who makes the delineation between misinformation and disinformation, and what is misinformation and disinformation?
That's exactly right. And these decisions are basically being left to the government and to the social media platforms. In terms of what the legislation says about misinformation and disinformation, it talks about, I've got it here in front of me, it talks about how it contains information that is false, misleading or deceptive, and that is likely to cause serious harm. And so, again, we don't really have a definition of serious harm. There's a section in the legislation which talks about harm, which talks about, hatred against different groups in Australian society, harm to the environment, harm to the health of Australians. But what does it mean to amount to serious harm on those different counts? And again, as I said before, the definition of all these things is going to be left up to the government body, who has to decide, are the social media platforms cracking down hard enough? And then to the social media companies themselves, really, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are going to be getting slapped with these massive fines. So they're going to have their own policies and to sort of make those decisions so that they don't end up in that position with the government.
And Rachael, I take it these things are going to be done by, rather than going to a court system, getting charged with having breached these regulations, some government body will just decide that you have, and bang, you've got your fine or you've got your sanction. So it's not actually a legal or a judicial process.
That's how it seems at the moment. Look, I haven't had a chance to go through the legislation with a fine-tooth comb, and I will be doing that before I make my submission on this before the 6th of August. But at this stage, it seems like huge powers are being given to these government bodies, who, by the way, are not even going to be subject to the misinformation laws themselves. So the government and the media are exempt under the legislation from being able to actually propagate misinformation. So that basically means that the government or the media, say whatever they like, but those who want to, critique them or to call them out, including opposition parties, by the way, could themselves, be silenced.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, this is not dissimilar to the challenges we face here as well. And I said often similarities across the ditch. Look, while we're concerned about, or some people are concerned about preserving freedom of speech, there are instances where things can do harm. An interesting little book being published and retailed in Australia by a group I don't think we have here called, is it Big W? Who are Big W?
Yeah, so Big W is sort of an equivalent to like maybe Target or Kmart, maybe even something like the Warehouse in New Zealand, one of those kind of big department stores that does a bit of everything. Yeah.
What's the book that is causing the brouhaha?
So the book is called Welcome to Sex by two female authors, Yumi Steins and Dr. Melissa Kang. And it is marketed to children. You know, the authors say it's for children between 10 to 15 years old. One of the authors says she'd be happy for a child as young as 8 to read it.
Yeah.
So it's marketed to children. It's also marketed to their parents. And I have described it as basically a graphic sex guide for children, because when you start to read through it, that's basically what it is. And, you know, I don't know how much I can say on your show today.
You can say whatever you want on my show. Rachael?
I guess kids will be at school at this time. I'm not sure if they're on holiday, but, you know, it's just so explicit. Like, I bought a copy.
No, come on. Look, just gird your loins and, oh, gosh, that's the wrong phrase. Just tell us what it talks about.
Look, it's instructing children. It's instructing children, you know, about things like anal sex, fingering, blowjobs, other kinds of oral sex. You know, standard intercourse. It's talking about sexting and nudes, and you know, throughout.
Does it tell them how to do it or what those things are?
Oh, both.
And it's for 10 to 15-year-olds.
Complete with imagery, you know, cartoon images, but complete with imagery.
Okay. And this is being sold in open retail at Big W in Australia. It's not like part of a school syllabus anywhere, is it, or in libraries?
Well, actually, I will just mention on that count. So it was being sold in Big W, Target and Dimmicks. Just last night, we actually got told that Big W has taken it off their shelves in response to public backlash and media coverage, which is just phenomenal. They are still selling it online, and to be honest, I don't think they should be selling it for children anywhere. Apparently, they've put it in their parenting section now. But even the idea of parents reading this to their 10-year-old child is just, it's so incredibly disturbing. So I know a lot of people are still very keen to get them to remove it altogether. And obviously, you know, we're still trying to get Target and Dimmicks to do the same.
All right. Has it been selling well? Do we know?
I have no idea.
Okay. Look, the other thing, and I'm going to stick you to this. We've just had a conversation about freedom of speech, right? Being able to say what you think and engage and share ideas. And here you are in the next breath saying, oh, I should be able to decide what other people can publish and other people can read. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, completely fair comment. And look, Sean, I'm a huge advocate of free speech. I think that it is very important that we are able to have conversations without, you know, the government censoring opinions they don't like. I think it's incredibly important for a democratic society. But I do also think that child safeguarding is incredibly important. And I do think that there is certain material that little children should not be exposed to before a certain age. So I think...
Okay, 10 to 15 though, it's not like suddenly at 15 you're going to learn everything you need to know about the incredibly difficult to navigate thing of, you know, puberty and sexual relations and stuff. Don't you think that parents might need a resource, as we are not all born as wonderful sex educators or anything? Don't you think parents might have use for a resource that demystifies some of this or speaks frankly about it without it being, and of course the fear is it's some sort of grooming mechanism?
I think resources are helpful. I think this particular resource is too graphic, too explicit. I think children, they need to know about, you know, male and female anatomy. I think they need to know about the age of consent. They need to know about safeguarding between those ages that you mentioned, 10 to 15. I do not think they need to know about licking out another person's butthole at that age, or about how to send nude safely by chopping off your head, because at the end of the day...
No, it doesn't. Hang on, I wasn't realising this. They tell you how to send a dick pic.
Yes, but the authors have said, there's a comment in there which basically says you can send it safely by chopping off your head, and then it has I get you now. That's sick. It's extreme, Sean. Honestly, I've got the book online. I paid my $8 for it or whatever it was, and there are these comments throughout the book though which say, oh, by the way though, if you are under 18, this is considered child porn. But it's not ever saying don't do it. It's just saying, oh, by the way, the law says this. There's another section in the book which talks about, what if
aren't there laws against publishing a book like this?
Oh, I would have thought so, and believe you me, I will be looking further into it.
Okay, I do see your point now. If literally you have a book telling kids, for kids between 10 and 15, that tells them how to send nude pictures without risk of prosecution, then there's something seriously wrong. So I take it that Australians are pretty upset about this.
Parents are absolutely furious. I've had hundreds, if not thousands, of messages across platforms, and that's the reason that Big W pulled it off their shelves, because the backlash was just so strong. Yeah,
I wonder if there were any grown-ups or normal people in that meeting. Look, while I've got you here, Rachel, I want to ask you a question. We're just trying to separate hype and brainwashing from reality. Is Australia looking at New Zealand saying the FIFA World Cup of soccer or football, that's an amazing global event and like the biggest thing since sliced bread? Did you even know it was on?
I'm not a big sports follower, Sean. So, but at the end of the day, women's sport isn't often given the same attention as male sport, and we do know that. But yeah.
You didn't know the Women's World Cup of soccer was on in New Zealand, did you? Let's be honest.
No, I didn't.
You didn't. Had no idea. Okay, we've got our government giving away tickets at the moment to stadiums because they can't fill them up. But we're told we are the centre of the world's attention, that the rest of the globe's eyes are upon us, and they're clearly not if a feminist like you doesn't even know the bloody thing's on. Look, the other thing I wanted to ask, we have still got ongoing discussion and legal ramifications flowing on from the Posey Parker rally and the terrible things that happened here. We now understand the two people being charged with violence are not going to get diversion while the wheels of justice are turning. Those people are going to have been charged with assaults, various forms of assault, and will appear in court. And we understand that Kelly J herself is going to be coming back to New Zealand at some stage. Has that issue and the issues around her visit in Australia, have they subsided, or are the ramifications and, if you like, the shockwaves of that still continuing on?
I think that her visit definitely stirred up more conversation about the issues around women's single-sex spaces and gender ideology, no doubt. I know on another show with you I spoke about Victorian MP Moira Deeming. So she is, she's still expelled from the Victorian Parliamentary Liberal Party, and she has now issued her third defamation concerns notice to the leader of the party. So she is, she's embarking on a defamation suit against him for what he did to her in relation to Kelly J King's visit, which is basically to call her out as a Nazi.
Boy, there are lots of them around, apparently. Everywhere you go, there are Nazis, according to certain people in New Zealand. Hey, Rachel, really good catching up. We must do it again soon. I do get where you're coming from with the book. Now, I've just been told, actually, Australia is co-hosting the Women's Football Cup. Did you know that?
Again, Sean, not a big sports follower, but I'm sure everyone else in Australia knows that.
I'll get our government to send you some tickets. They're free.
Thanks, Sean.
That is Rachael Wong, the CEO of the Women's Forum in Australia. Yeah, look, I was going to call her a hypocrite on the book, but honestly, a book being sold for 10 to 15-year-olds in Australia that tells you how to send a dick pic, not cool. Not cool in any way at all. I mean, I'd say a book for adults that tells you how to sell a dick pic shouldn't be allowed to be sold. We live in a weird world. Back to the days of Roger Douglas, I say.